Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Lisa Mackenzie. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at the European Marine Energy Centre, also known as EMEC, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. The webinar today, we're going to run through a brief intro to EMEC and the West of Orkney Wind Farm, and then we'll delve into the Offshore Wind R&I Programme, looking at the challenge areas, innovation calls, and the application process. We'll have some time at the end of the session to address any questions you might have. So please do add any questions that you've got into the Q&A function throughout the presentations. You can also upvote any questions that others put in there so that you're keen to hear the answers too. In the webinar today, I'm joined by my EMEC colleagues. So I've got Abby Sinclair, our project manager for the R&I programme, Andy Baldock, an EMEC associate, who'll cover the work that's been done to develop the challenge areas and an overview of the innovation call. We've got Richard Say, senior met-ocean engineer at EMEC, and Erica Kemp, who's supporting behind the scenes today. And then from West of Orkney Wind Farm, we've got Lewis Kirkwood, project engineer, Gwenna Corbell, deputy technical manager and functional lead, Neil Jeffrey, senior transport and installation manager, Ian Phillips, construction manager, and Jake Royal, senior met-ocean engineer. So thank you very much to everybody for participating in the webinar. I'll provide a brief introduction to EMEC as a starting point and then hand over to Lewis to give a bit of an introduction to West of Orkney Wind Farm as well. So for those of you that haven't heard of EMEC before, we are a not-for-profit innovation catalyst pioneering the transition to a clean energy future. Most of our work is quite experimental, putting early stage pre-commercial technological solutions to the test. And we've taken part in R&D projects totaling over £500 million for the development of the renewables industry to date. Our key mission is to reduce the time, cost and risk of integrating ocean energy and associated low carbon technologies into the future energy system. Now, EMEC is best known as the world's leading test and demonstration site for wave and tidal energy technologies. So that's technologies that harness the power of the sea. We're based in the Orkney Islands off the north of Scotland, and we've got 4 offshore test sites to facilitate technology demonstrations. So 2 of these test sites are grid connected, and they're in very harsh wave and tidal energy conditions, so truly putting these technologies to the test. And then we have 2 other non-grid connected offshore test sites in slightly less challenging conditions. So those can be acting as a stepping stone from going from tank test facilities and also for demonstrating tools and techniques in general marine operations. We also have an onshore test facility, which includes hydrogen production and battery storage facilities as well. We have had many different projects demonstrate at EMEC over the years. So while I mentioned that we are primarily focused on ocean energy, we have diversified and accommodated a lot of different demonstrations through the years, so supporting ocean energy technologies, but also offshore wind components and tools and techniques as well. Looking at how to demonstrate tools, materials, components and subsystems. So it's not just the full-scale technology demonstrations, and also then looking at how to demonstrate the marine operations, looking at trials around moorings and cables and connections. You can use the test sites for training and health and safety practices. And more laterally, we've diversified into looking at onshore and offshore storage, looking at green hydrogen and the creation of e-fuels, and how our activities can help decarbonise other industries, for example, maritime and aviation. So that's a brief introduction to EMEC. Over the last few years, we've been working very closely with the West of Orkney Wind Farm on developing the Offshore Wind Research and Innovation Programme that we're going to be discussing today, to look to how we can help address some of the challenges that will be faced in developing a wind farm in the really harsh conditions that we see to the west of Orkney. So I'm going to pass you over to Lewis Kirkwood, project engineer at West of Orkney Wind Farm, who will give you some more information about their project. So over to you, Lewis.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as Lisa says, I'm a project engineer on the project. I'm seconded from Total Energy as one of the shareholders, and I've been on the wind farm project for about 2 years now. So I'll give a quick overview of the wind farm to hopefully give you some insight into our project. So what it is a joint venture between three companies, Corio Generation. So these guys are part of an Australian bank that operate internationally, and they are the development arm of that bank with a global development pipeline of over 20 gigawatts. And Total Energies, who I'm seconded from, is a French oil major, and we are probably one of the only oil majors now maintaining the track of trying to pursue really ambitious renewable targets. And that's 35 gigawatts of renewable production by 2025 and 100 gigawatts by 2030, which would place us in the top 5 renewable producers in the world if we met those targets. And also Ridge, who are a smaller Scottish project developer that conceived the idea of West of Orkney Wind Farm and still maintain some key strategic roles in the wind farm project today. So to give you an overview of the components of the site, well, first of all, we are located west of Orkney, and that's about 30 kilometers off of Orkney and 20 to 25 kilometers north of Caithness. So we're relatively close to the shore, and that gives us a kind of shorter export cable route of around 36 kilometers offshore. And because of that, we have landed on an HVAC transmission system because we're close to shore. Now, the lease area is around 650 kilometers squared. If you just go back one more slide, Erica. Thanks. Yeah, we're at 650 kilometers squared, which it's a big site. So this stealth bomber shape, as we like to call it, could actually fit quite nicely in between Stirling and Glasgow. So it's a fairly large site. And because of that, we can fit up to 125 turbines and of around 15 to 21 megawatt capacity each. So we are looking at the kind of latest and next generations of turbines as well. And we've got a grid connection for up to about 225 gigawatts. And we're in water depths of 50 to 70 meters. And these are very dynamic seas, which I'll come to in a second, another slide. And yeah, I won't go through all the details, but it's a big site and it's a very windy site as well. Just more information on the seabed itself. So in the lease area, in the stealth bomber shape, we've got 2 banks. We've got Whittenhead Bank in the south and southwest, and Stormy Bank in the north part of the site. And these are an average water depth of about 40 or 50 meters. So very suited to fixed bottom offshore wind. And in the middle, we've got slightly deeper waters up to about 70 or 80 meters, which really pushes the boundaries on fixed bottom winds and is more suited to floating. Also in the map there, you can see our export cable corridor that we've mapped out, as well as the onshore segment of that, which leads to the Spittal substation that we'll be connecting into. So I mentioned the dynamic sea states, and this is a point that I want to get across in this webinar, because it's really applicable to the weather forecasting call and the SOV design innovation call as well. So this is one of the key challenges on our project. You can see some numbers along the top there of some typical parameters that we'll be facing on the site. And if you're new to offshore wind, then it's worth noting that work generally stops around 1.5 meters, 10 meters per second wind speed. That's 1.5 meters significant wave height. And construction also becomes difficult when the wave peak periods exceed 8 seconds. So if you can look at the graph on the left-hand side, what we've plotted there is essentially a number of different forecasts differentiated by age. So the kind of warmer colors of the forecasts are the longer term forecasts, and the cooler colors are the forecasts in nearer term conditions. And the black dots represent the actual measured parameters. The black dashed line going across the graph is the significant wave height at 1.5 meters HS. And so as you can see, what this shows, in the month of October 2023, we've got a very small handful of days where we could actually operate and do work on the wind farm. So what we want to focus on here is not necessarily the peaks of the graph, which might be drawing your attention, but it's the troughs, because we know we're not going to be able to work in those peaks. They're just way outside the boundaries of any potential vessel that could be on the site. So we're really focused on getting those troughs as accurate as possible, so we know exactly when and where we can work. Like if we focus on the days of the 8th and 9th of October, you can see that the different colored forecasts give quite very different results. And potentially, if we went with one forecast over another, we would be putting ourselves out of a couple of days of work, when in reality, we could have been doing work. So this really shows the importance of getting the weather forecast right. And it's one of the purposes behind this call, is to see what innovations and technologies are out there that would support this endeavor. Also on the table on the right, we put a couple of data points in which we can be provided to the successful applicants. So that's 1 year of site measurements, which we've then turned into a 44-year hindcast. We've also got live wave measurements currently planned for the summer, and we're doing nearshore wind measurements at the moment as well. So these are the types of data that we can provide to successful applicants. So this slide shows the roadmap to first power in 2029. I want to focus on the major milestones here. So the key to a successful offshore wind farm is 4 things really. For the first thing, you need a site lease seabed rights, essentially. So we got the seabed rights through our offshore area agreement through the ScotWind round in 2022. So that was the first key ticked off. The second key is getting a grid connection, and we've got a firm grid offer that we received in 2024. The third key is then getting your consent to then build the wind farm and operate it. And you might have seen that we were in the news yesterday for getting backing from the Highland Council for the offshore consent. So now that just sits with the Scottish Government and the Marine Directorate to give us the final determination. So we're expecting a successful determination in the next few months on that. And the fourth key is as a route to market. For us, that's a CFD. It could also be a power purchase agreement or a merchant rate if you wanted to go straight to the market. And for us, there's allocation round 7 and 8, which we may be looking to bid into either 2 of those. Other major milestones are we'll be looking to take the FID in 2026, commence construction in 27, and that's on the road to first power in 2029. So at the moment, what that red line shows is that we are currently going through feed studies, and we're hoping that any innovations out of this program can feed into our feed studies. So it's worth mentioning the supply chain and skills development that we see on the project. So we've got quite a few initiatives that we're supporting in the north of Scotland, and that includes this program being led by our friends at EMEC. We've also got a £1.2 million educational initiative led by the University of Highlands and Islands, and Fit for Renewables scheme led by Ori Catapult that we are sponsoring. We also support local apprentices in the Caithness and Northern Sutherland. And what this feeds into is our plan for 60% of the project to be delivered by UK and local businesses over the lifetime, and 40% of that coming from Scotland. So we've got very ambitious local content targets, and we are working today to meet those. And my final slide just paints a picture of those types of companies that we've employed to meet those local content objectives. But that's it from me. We've got a few colleagues from the West Orkney Wind Farm here today to answer your questions, and so I hope to hear from them soon. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Lewis. That was very interesting, and please do put any questions that you've got into the Q&A and we'll pick them up at the end of the presentations. Just going to move on now to giving an overview of the Research and Innovation Programme. So this is a programme that we launched just over a year ago alongside West Orkney Wind Farm. It's aiming to embed economic benefits in Scotland while supporting companies to explore ways to overcome specific technical challenges in offshore wind development. Key objectives include reducing the time, cost and risk of offshore wind rollout in high energy environments, as Lewis has just given a bit of an overview to, accelerating innovation and particularly trying to enhance research and innovation capacity in Scotland, and helping to create more jobs and help businesses to grow and bringing skills, capabilities and economic benefits closer to where the wind farm projects are being built. What we're looking for in terms of opening our innovation calls is looking for novel solutions to help deliver these wind farm projects faster, cheaper and at lower risk. And within the innovation call, there is support of up to £300,000 up for grabs. But also successful applicants may get support with developing a robust project proposal, so we can help with writing the proposal itself, accessing alternative grant funding, support with demonstrating technologies at EMEX test and demonstration sites. And the programme also aims to give recognition and support to successful projects to help leverage additional public and private investment into these projects as well. To give a kind of brief overview of how the programme was put together, we worked very closely with the West Orkney Wind Farm to identify site-specific challenges, and my colleague Andy will go through these in a couple of minutes' time. We reviewed the latest innovation outputs and relevant to these challenges, and looked at regional innovation capacity throughout Scotland as well, and then went through as our prioritisation exercise, looking at the challenges and establishing a programme of innovation calls. We launched the first call in December 2023, and we've got 3 projects that were successful through that first call and are now live and working their way through the projects. And we launched our second call just a couple of weeks ago with the deadline as the 9th of April. So we need to get applications in by 9th of April, and looking to have projects commence from around September onwards. The aspiration of the programme is to bring additional sponsors, so other industry partners on board in time as well. So ideally other wind farms will join the programme, and we could launch additional calls either alongside West Orkney Wind Farm, or it could be independent calls on very specific innovation challenges as well, so that we would get more projects going through the programme in due course. So in terms of how to get involved, the key focus of the webinar today is giving an overview of how to apply to our latest innovation call, and ensuring that projects need to be innovative and particularly targeted to West Orkney Wind Farm that are sponsoring this innovation call. but we are also looking and inviting additional sponsors to come on board as well. So looking to see how we can help other wind farms accelerate innovation in key challenge areas and help engage constructively with supply chains. So I will pass on to Andy now, who's going to cover the challenge areas and go into the innovation calls in a little bit more detail. Over to you, Andy.
Great, thanks Lisa, thanks very much. Yeah, so for some context, I'm just going to give a quick background to the overall challenge areas that were considered by the programme, and then go through the 2 specific challenge areas that are in this innovation call in more detail. So as a bit of background, there's quite a lot of initial work went into deriving the challenge areas that the R&I programme could potentially support. Starting at the top left of this slide, this was done by reviewing all the challenges and innovations that had already been identified by the 3 key organisations in 3 different jurisdictions. So those were the Offshore Wind Innovation Hub run by ORE Katapult, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, best known as NREL, supported by the US Department of Energy, and also the European Technology Innovation Platform on Wind Energy, which is supported by the European Commission. This gave about, I think it was 331 individual challenges, although some of those overlapped. Obviously, some focus was needed. So we therefore compiled those challenges into 8 main challenge areas. And within those 8 main challenge areas, we created 37 specific challenges that are most relevant to West of Orkney Wind Farm and the wider sector. These were then trimmed down to 32 individual challenges after some prioritisation work with West of Orkney Wind Farm. And then 2 of those 32 challenges were prioritised for the first innovation call last year. And that's resulted in 3 innovation project contracts, a little bit more on that later on. And then for this latest innovation call, we've again reprioritised the 32 challenges and decided on 2 more specific challenges to be addressed in this call. The prioritisation, I guess, ensures that the challenges address the specific concerns of Western Orkney Wind Farm and are focused on reducing the time, cost and risk in the development, construction, operational phases. And they also align with the timescales of Western Orkney Wind Farm and the wider ambitions of the Scottish and UK content. So just going on to this slide, in terms of the 8 key challenge areas, as I just said, we arrived at these 8 key challenge areas. They cover all the aspects that you might expect from an offshore wind farm, ranging from metocean and turbines through to installation, operation and maintenance, but also some that are cross-cutting. And you can see on this slide the 2 key challenge areas that are now open in this innovation call, which fall under metocean and O&M. You can go to the next slide. So this slide shows the 32 specific challenges that will be considered by the programme as a whole. I won't go into all of these, but those of you that have been in the sector for a while will recognise many of these. If anyone wants more information on any of these, for example, because you want to think about a future innovation call, then all of these are set out on the website, offshoreinnovation.scot. The last innovation call targeted A2 and E1, which you can see highlighted. And as I said, this resulted in 3 innovation projects, which are currently underway. More details on those 3 currently contracted innovation projects are available on the website as well. That's under the news section. I would highly recommend people review those 3 currently contracted projects, as the new innovation projects that are proposed in this latest innovation call should obviously be substantially different to those projects that are already underway, but also the new innovation projects in this call could potentially build off or link back into those existing projects in some way. So it's definitely worth people having a look at those projects. This latest innovation call is targeted again at A2, but with a slightly different slant to the previous call, and also at F2, which you can see highlighted there. So I'll go on to talk about those in a bit more detail. If you can just go on one more again. So this is a little bit different to what Lewis showed, but this slide is here to provide a little bit more site-specific context to what Lewis showed earlier on. Top shows a time lapse of an ex-tropical hurricane called Epsilon, which you can see would have had a significant effect on West of Orkney Wind Farm. The bottom left-hand chart is the associated significant wave height. This later reached around 14 meters HS in the West of Orkney Wind Farm area, which is actually about the same as the 100-year wave in the northern North Sea. But the West of Orkney Wind Farm's environmental conditions will generally be more onerous than for wind farms in the North Sea due to its more exposed location. Again, as Lewis said, particularly you can expect more sustained periods of longer swells from the much longer fetch to the west that you can obviously see in this, and the generally prevailing westerly winds. Obviously, there wouldn't be active operations in these sorts of conditions, but it does show some of the challenges around weather forecasting, which we touched on earlier on. I'm going to go on to talk about next. So, as we just said, the site experiences persistent periods of high wind speed and high sea states, and that means that whatever is chosen for the turbine accessibility metric, and Lewis talked about 1.5 meters earlier on, and the second call is to address some of that. The short time periods for suitable weather windows will always be challenging, particularly maybe compared to those in the North Sea. So the key focus of this call is on weather forecasting, is around improving the quality of the weather window forecasting, by which really we mean the reliable identification of operational weather windows at short, medium, and long timescales. So this has the potential to significantly improve safety and operations and to reduce costs. Improved forecasting of weather windows could be achieved in many ways. There are some examples on the right-hand side of this slide, but I won't go through them all. But for example, can AI or machine learning driven forecasts provide higher accuracy than some of the more conventional model approaches, and over what sort of timescales? The bottom left-hand chart shows some results from a Google Research AI model, which in this instance appear to be better than some of those models. What other sort of innovative techniques could provide the very specific weather window forecasting that's needed? That's really, I guess, the question for you to go and answer. Could you add in more far field data? Would that help? And then obviously there will always be uncertainties in the forecast, but can they be better understood and somehow taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the message really is if you have an innovation which you think could make a substantial difference to the accuracy of weather window forecasting, don't worry if it's not on this list. These are obviously just examples, and we're looking for innovation which obviously by its nature can't all be identified by us. So hopefully that gives you a good summary of the weather forecasting call. So on to the next one, which is called E1, which is related to SOV design for turbine access. So for the same reasons that we just discussed, personal access from service operation vessels is obviously a critical safety risk, but it's also essential for installation, commissioning and operations, and the maintenance phases of the project. So the key focus in this SOV design call is therefore to increase the safety of personnel transfer whilst maximising opportunities for accessing the turbine safely, and thus hopefully widen the parameters for turbine access in the weather windows that I just discussed. So the two calls will work quite well together, one to try and widen those parameters and one to make the actual prediction of the weather windows more accurate. In essence, this means being able to access the turbine safely in higher wave conditions, longer swells, or higher wind speeds than one could currently expect to do when you're using either SOVs that are currently deployed or those that are in the new build pipeline at the moment. So good examples of innovation projects in this area could be novel hull designs, modifications to existing hull designs, types of stabilizing system or stability control systems, or other ancillary equipment and systems. You may wonder why I've chosen some pictures of old vessels when we talk about new innovations. Well, firstly, it's hard to show a picture of something that hasn't been invented. But secondly, actually, they're surprisingly relevant. If you don't recognize it, the bottom left-hand picture is the famous Cutty Sark clipper, which is now berthed in Greenwich. Clipper ships were very, very innovative in their day, and the Cutty Sark was actually built at Dumbarton in Scotland, and it was actually named after the witch in Tam O'Shanter. So a very good Scottish content, despite bringing some of the first imported goods over from the Far East. The bottom right-hand picture is a modern version of a far older outrigger sailing canoe concept, which is thought to have been around for centuries. This was also very innovative in its time and partly designed to help get through the surf zone, showing how modifications to existing hull designs and stabilizer systems, for example, can help allow access to the offshore industry of the time, despite the challenging wave conditions. So just to reiterate what I said on the earlier slide, if you have an innovation which doesn't neatly fit into these examples, just bear in mind they are examples, and we're interested in all innovative ideas that could significantly enhance turbine access from SOVs. So just before I hand over to Abby, who will discuss the application process, we have a quick poll that we would like everyone to complete so we can understand more about the challenge areas that you have an interest in and now and also for future calls. So this should be coming up on your screens now, hopefully. Thank you. Over to you, Abby, when you're ready.
Super. Thank you very much, Andy. I will now speak yourselves through the application process and criteria that for those getting involved. So on our website, you will find all the documentation you need to help you submit your application. This includes the call-specific terms and conditions, as well as the programme scope and guidance document. The scope and guidance document provides you an overview of the eligibility, the funding and support available, the application process, publicity, insurance requirements, and ways that we will monitor your project if you are awarded the funding. On evaluating your proposals, we'll be looking for some key criteria. This needs to be met and demonstrable. This includes ensuring your application is relevant to the challenge area you're applying to, ensuring your application is technically feasible and will have a demonstratable benefit to the call sponsors, the West Mountain Wind Farm, ensuring your proposal will have a benefit to the wider offshore wind sector, ensuring you've considered all risks and have mitigations for these, ensuring you have the key expertise to develop your project, and ensuring your project is deliverable within the desired timeframe. Pop to the next slide, please, Erica. Here we're going to see the process of applying for the funding through the R&I programme. Stage 1, the applications are open until Wednesday, the 9th of April. If you're successful in meeting the key criteria, you will then progress into stage 2, where you will submit a detailed project proposal. And if you are then successful in stage 2, you will be invited to an in-person pitch in July. So we'll go into more detail for these now. Stage 1, your initial application would be submitted through a form on our website. The application form is broken down into 4 sections, which you can see on the screen now: organisational information, project information, funding purpose, and an applicant's declaration. This purpose has been designed to be as easy as possible, and there is a downloadable guidance document which should help you walk through each of these stages. Your progress will be saved automatically when you're completing the form online. And overall, the purpose of this stage and this application is to provide an overview of your project for the team to assess. Quick reminder on the timelines there: queries to be submitted by the 2nd of April, and the deadline for applications lunchtime on the 9th of April, and applicants will be notified of their outcome by the 9th of May. Next slide, please, Erica. Going into now the stage 2 and stage 3. Successful applicants from stage 1 will be asked to submit a detailed project proposal for stage 2. This is a more formal proposal where the applicants will go into much more detail on their innovation. A template will be provided for this stage, and EMIC is available to provide assistance and guidance on completing these applications if required. The criteria doesn't change drastically, but we are looking to see a demonstratable benefit in a few areas, including those shown on the screen again. If you're then successful in stage 2, you'll be invited to an in-person pitch where you present your project to a reviewing team via a 15-minute presentation, followed by a 30-minute Q&A session. Applicants will then be notified of their outcome and projects looking to start from September of this year. Next slide, please, Erica. On our website, you will find a section for frequently asked questions. Please have a review of these, but if you have any other questions, please reach out to us via our email address or give us a call on the number on the screen. I'll now hand back to Lisa.
Thank you very much, Abby, and to Andy for the overview of the programme there and how to apply. So we do have some questions coming in through the Q&A. Again, if you do have any other questions to ask, please put them into the Q&A function just now. I can answer the first one. They've had a couple of questions around the slides and the webinar recording. So we do aim to publish that very early next week, put the recording and answers to the questions out early next week, and there'll be an email that is sent round everybody that joined the webinar today. So that will be coming soon. Jake, there's a question here that I'll put your way, if that's okay. One on the forecasting side, what timeframes are you most interested in? It says, I understand longer is always better, but is there a minimum lead time that you'd need for operations and decision making?
I think any improvement that we get on the weather forecasting is good. I mean, I would imagine the part of the forecast that we would look at the most intently, and I'm looking at Ian now to see if he nods or starts to scowl, would probably be in the 6 to 24 hours range. That's the one where you're deciding whether you work, don't work. But on the other hand, we might be mobilizing resources from Europe. So if we knew, or we had an insight that, we thought it was going to be a cracking spring, we might decide to mobilize resources early. So it could be anything from live. Most of our attention is 6 to 24 hours, I'd say. Is that right, Ian? Nod or scowl? He's nodding and scowling.
Yeah, I would. No. That's a smile, Jake. That's a smile. Okay. Yeah. Essentially, yeah. For the short-term decision making offshore during the construction activities, we'd be looking to first of all, we'd be looking to have an updated forecast at least every 6 hours, and really the following period of 24 hours, it's critical that we understand whether we're going to be within our limiting environmental criteria for the operations we're going to perform. And in addition to that, it would be beneficial to improve the accuracy of the 3-day look ahead, and then more so, the furthest we probably look with any confidence would be 7 days. So we're looking for improvements in all of those areas, really, just to the accuracy of the forecasting we can achieve.
But if we had a view on the reliability of the forecast, say out to 2 weeks, that's information worth having. So I think if you've got an idea, put it in.
Excellent. Thank you, Jake and Ian, for that. Another question that's been asked is around technology readiness levels, of which TRL is of most interest. Possibly put that West-Martin Wind Farm's way as well. Lewis, if you want to come in on that.
Yes, Lisa. Which question was this? I'm just trying to find it, sorry.
Oh, it was just which TRL is more your interest, was the question.
Right. Well, because we're in 2025 now, and we're looking to get first power in 2029 and become operational from then on, we'll be looking towards the middle to the higher end of the TRL scale. And that's down to the time that we have available to research and develop these innovations and implement them on a commercial scale. So really we're looking towards the kind of higher end of those TRL of that TRL ladder. But I would say, I mean, if you've got something in a lower TRL scale but you think it could be developed quickly and in time, maybe even if it would only come in towards 5 years into the operations, for example, then don't be put off by that. I would say still definitely put an application in, and we can judge it on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks, Lewis. Abby, there's a question here around, are there any restrictions about applicants? So companies, universities, consortiums, etc. Would you be happy to come in on that one?
Super, thanks, Lisa. Yep, no bother. The short answer is no. We would encourage applicants from all all sectors or all organisations, and we also encourage consortiums to apply into this calls. And if there's anything that we can do to assist with the application process in that, then I would encourage people to reach out.
Thanks, Abby. Jake, another one for you here. It'd be great to have more information on the recorded data that's available. So is it live data? Is it at the turbine site or at the port or both? Or is it satellite data already available? Or is that expected to be sourced from the applicant?
So what we have on file right now is we've got a year's worth of measurements of waves, tides, currents, and wind speed at the project. So those are measurements from spring 2023 to spring 2024. We also have live measurements being measured right now off the coast of Hoy. So that's about 30 kilometers east of the project. And in the coming months, the plan is that we'll be deploying a wave buoy in the project that will be giving live data. So there could be live data that we could use to test the concept. I think if there was a concept there that needed live data, we'd be certainly interested in it. We just need the stimulus to make that happen. So that's what we've got at the moment. Oh, also we've got the 44-year record, the historic record from the model as well. So but yeah, I can talk about that offline if anybody's interested.
Excellent, thanks. Jake. Another question that's come in is asking if it's possible to combine two of the challenge areas. So they've suggested A2, which is the weather forecasting, and E1, which is the design for short weather window installation. So is it possible to combine two items within innovation that can help with both goals? I would say yes, particularly given that the A2 is one of the ones that's live just now. If you're hitting some of the other challenge areas alongside the innovation call topic, then that would be excellent. Ticks more than one box. Neil, Jake, don't know if you've got anything else that you would like to say on that. It feels like that sort of broaches both of the topics that we've currently got open.
I mean, from our side, or from my side, I'd say, look, we're interested in solving the problem, and if you can solve two problems, then that's great. That's twice as many people to say yes. And I think it's more likely that someone says yes than says no. So yeah, cover all the bases. Don't spread yourself too thin though. Don't just go, oh, we'll put a bit of that in, just to give yourself a to cover an extra base. But yeah, if it covers both, I'm interested. What about you, Neil?
Oh, I agree, Jake. We're on the search here for your ideas. Those people on the call, so if you see something, put it in. Absolutely, we're open to hearing your thoughts. So absolutely.
Thanks for that. Neil, this might be another one for you. Can you provide detailed sensory observations for your vessel's performance when operating in the wind farm, including any available data?
I mean, we're happy. We obviously don't have any vessels in the field just now, other than survey vessels that we're going to be doing over the course of this summer. But as Jake's alluded to, we've got some site measurement data. So what information we do have, I'm sure we can input into the call and make available if that's of benefit to any of the proposals that are being put forward.
Great, thanks, Neil. I'll take the next question. There's one just in terms of the estimated date from which other specific challenges will open. So we don't have anything set at the moment. Within the programme, we're being very much driven by our sponsor, West of Orkney Wind Farm, in terms of their priorities, which is why we're focusing on the two call topics that we currently have open. And we're sort of largely taking that one call at a time at the moment. So we don't have a set date or any set topics that will be for the next call coming up. So that's a watch this space on that one. The next question is, what level of funding, if any, is expected from the applicant for the funding, or will this depend on type of company, small, medium size, or university? Abby, would you be happy to come in on that one, please?
Thanks, Lisa. I would say that there's no level of funding expected from an applicant applying into this programme. However, it is something that we ask you to detail when you're completing into the form if you have any co-financing options for your project. And in relation to the type of company size, again, no, that wouldn't have an impact on the funding intensity.
Thanks. And the last question, we've managed to get through the Q&A. There's one here just in terms of, will the outputs from A1 be available for E1? I think I can roll that into my previous answer in terms of those two topics haven't come up within the calls as yet. So because we haven't prioritised the dates and timings for the next calls, it's hard to say to that one at the moment. But thank you very much for asking the question. And that's us at the end of the Q&A. I'll just check around the room whether anyone has any other points that they want to make before we close the programme today. Oh, and just as I've said that, I'm going to take one more question, which has come in, which is it open to UK establishments or worldwide? To answer that one, it's open worldwide. So while there is part of the evaluation criteria looking to have Scottish and UK impact, what we're really interested in is the best innovations to meet the needs of the challenge. So the programme is open to companies from around the world. Brilliant. Okay, so that's us drawing the webinar to a close. Just wanted to say thank you very much for everybody for tuning in to the session today and for submitting your questions. We will be addressing all questions, sharing the webinar recording and questions probably very early next week. If you do have any additional questions, please get in touch with us at emec@offshoreinnovation.scot. And I would like to extend my thanks to my EMEC colleagues that have joined the webinar today, Abby, Andy, Richard and Erica, and also to Lewis, Gwenna, Neil, Ian and Jake for joining us from the West of Orkney Wind Farm. So thank you very much. And we're looking forward to receiving your applications to call 2 for the R&I programme. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.